Hello and welcome to Recipes with Ben. And in this video, I'm using my bread recipe that will be enhanced with garlic powder and chopped garlic as the base to make a cheesy, delicious garlic bread in the end. So let's get started with the recipe. The first step is similar to the one I just made on this channel, which you'll need to heat up water to between 105 and 110, as this is the right temperature for activating baker's yeast. I'm going to need 1 1/4 cup of water, and I'm going to add that to a large mixing bowl. Again, for the yeast food source, I'm adding 1 teaspoon of white sugar to the water, which will then be followed up with 2 teaspoons of active baker's yeast. And then I'm going to mix it all up together until the sugar is completely dissolved and let that sit for 10 to 15 minutes. The resulting mixture should look something like this, and then after that 10 to 15 minutes, if the yeast is active, it should look like this, with it being bubbly and foamy at the top of the liquid layer. Now it's time for the flavor and the flour. So I'm going to start with 2 teaspoons of salt, then I'm going to add in 20 grams of garlic powder. Follow that up with 10 cloves of diced garlic, which is about equivalent to 1 head of garlic. And then it's time to add 3 cups, which is 360 grams of bread flour to the liquid mixture. With all the ingredients in the bowl, it's time to mix the dough together, first with a strong spoon until it becomes shaggy, which should take about 30 seconds, and then begin to knead together until all the flour is hydrated. Now for this dough, I decided to try the stretch and fold method, which means taking one corner of the dough and pulling it to the near breakage point and then folding it over the dough. For the first step in the proof, I'm going to form it into a ball, and then I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of oil to the bottom of that bowl. Then I'm going to roll the dough around in it to make sure it's covered in the oil. And then next, I'll let the dough rest in a warm place with the lid on top for 30 minutes. I'm going to come back to the dough, and I'm going to perform the same stretch and fold technique to help build up gluten. I'm going to repeat this a total of 4 times over the next 2 hours before moving on to the next step. After 2 hours, I floured a work surface, but after watching a couple of videos on YouTube, I realized that this may not be the best method for shaping the loaf, so I may have a follow-up video trying to make a better shaping loaf at this stage. Because what happened with mine is it led to a flat disc shape in the end, but it doesn't take away from the flavor. It just doesn't get a good spring rise in the oven. So what I'm trying to accomplish here is to tuck the underside of the dough into the middle and shape it into a round circle. And I place the dough onto a piece of parchment paper, as this will go into the hot Dutch oven later, but if you have something for the dough to sit in while it rises, it will help make a better shape in the end. I cover the dough with a bowl and let it proof for an additional 30 minutes, and during that time I turn the oven on to 440 degrees with the Dutch oven in the lid inside, and that's just to allow the Dutch oven to heat up with the oven. I then remove the bowl and score the top of the dough with a knife, but a razor blade would also work. This scoring is used to control where the steam is released while the dough cooks inside the oven. And then I'm going to add some water to the Dutch oven and place the lid on top once I place the dough inside. Bake the bread inside the oven for 25 minutes, and after a time, remove the lid. The dough should be a light pale color, but we want to have a nice golden brown color in the end. So then you want to spritz it again with some more water and cook it for an additional 15 to 20 minutes until it reaches that desired color. Then after it's done, remove the bread from the Dutch oven and place it in a wire rack to cool completely. This could take up to an hour to 2 hours depending on how hot the bread still is. If you want to test to make sure the bread is completely cooked through, flip it over on the underside and tap it, and it should sound hollow at this point. After it's cooled completely, I place it in a bag and put it in the fridge overnight before proceeding on to the next step. The next step is to make the filling for the garlic bread. So now in a medium non-stick pan, I'm adding 4 tablespoons of butter over medium heat and allowing that to melt down. You can assist in this process by pushing the butter around with a spatula. Then after it's completely melted, I'm adding in 5 cloves of chopped garlic to that butter mixture. I continue to cook the garlic in the butter until the rawness is cooked out and it starts to turn a light golden brown color. And then I remove the garlic butter from the heat and put that aside so we can move on to assembly. I'm going to cut the loaf in half with a serrated knife. Then I'm going to spread it as evenly as possible the butter onto each half of the loaf. Then also split the garlic from the top and the bottom when pouring out the butter over the bread. I use a spatula to kind of spread it around more evenly, and a brush might help, but I don't own one. Now I'm going to add a single layer of pepper jack cheese, but you're welcome to use whatever cheese you prefer or none at all if you don't want it cheesy. I sandwiched the cheese between the two loaves, and now it's time to cook the garlic bread in the oven. So I place the bread on a baking sheet and cover the bread with foil so it doesn't burn when it goes in the oven. And I preheat the oven to 400 degrees, and then once I place the bread inside there, I'm going to cook it for 25 minutes or until the cheese in the center is fully melted. Then take it out of the oven and cut it into a knife to reveal a cheesy, buttery middle. Final garlic bread has a crispy exterior, a rich, buttery middle with a strong garlic flavor, with this delicious cheesiness that you can kind of see when you pull it apart. I'll say to make this better, I think the garlic butters need to be cooked a little bit longer to help mellow out some of that sharp, raw garlic flavor that still exists. But other than that, I paired this with a veggie noodle soup that I made previously on the channel, and by the time this video goes up, I've eaten all the garlic bread. So with all that said, thank you so much for watching. Smash that like button for garlic bread, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and I'll see you again soon.